Hi everybody, Ezra Levant here. It's April 29th and we're doing our daily 12 noon Eastern time live stream super chat. It's a great way for me to talk about things that are on my mind in a more free-flowing way, sometimes stream of consciousness. Sometimes we'll even watch 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes of hydraulic presses squishing different things, as we did on Monday. I do this show every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. My friends Sheila Gunn Reid and David Menzies do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, just because sometimes I have other things to do that are pressing. Although I really think it's fun. I get to stretch my legs a bit, show you some of my favorite videos, or unfortunately, the other day I just rambled for 40 minutes. I don't know. I suppose people did stick around and listen to it, but I think the fun of it is showing videos. I have in my hand here something that I received in my mailbox. I live in Toronto, and this arrived in my mailbox for free. And it's a broadsheet newspaper, and like that in itself is impressive. A lot of newspapers are what they call tabloid style, so they're folded like this, right? Like the Toronto Sun, for example. A lot of newspapers are sort of mini like that, just because it uses less paper. That big broadsheet, that's the old-fashioned way to read a newspaper, you know, like that. You can't even see the guy behind it. Full glorious color. I mean, that's sort of obvious. We're in the year 2020, but it's still nice to see just a beautifully produced newspaper that's just a feast for the eyes, beautifully laid out. I know he's so beautifully laid out. Well, like, look at this. Here's the timeline of the virus in China and how the Communist Party lied about it. So that's so big, you can't really look at that on your cell phone. Am I right? I mean, I read 99.9% of my news on my phone, or actually on my laptop also. Look at that gorgeous timeline. You can't really get the broad sweep of that on your phone. And the reason I tell you this is because it was so surprising to get this. And every headline, it was like this was written just for me. Can I read you some of the headlines? And you'll see why I'm telling you this in a moment. Exclusive CCP virus coverage. How the Chinese Communist Party endangered the world. The Chinese Communist Party's cover-up led to a pandemic that now threatens the lives of people around the globe. What really happened and what lessons can we learn? Read more inside. Oh my God, that is exactly what I'm interested in. And unlike Theresa Tam, Justin Trudeau, Patty Hajdu, Rosemary Barton, and the rest of the media party, they're calling it like it is. They're not serving up Chinese Communist Party propaganda. It's sort of the opposite. It is, as we like to say here at Rebel News, it's the other side of the story. But then, you know, they call this above the fold, because if this is in the newsstand, that's what you see in the newsstand, right? So below the fold, above the fold is where they really sell it to you. And again, it's like this thing was written with an audience of one in mind, but maybe you are interested in it too. How Beijing's cover-up led to a global pandemic. All right. 21 million fewer cell phone users in China may suggest higher death toll. Very interesting. We've talked about that on our show. Timeline of Beijing's cover-up and Canada-Taiwan actions. That was that big chart I showed you. China's bioweapon ambitions. Absolutely. As you know, the Wuhan Virology Institute is obviously in the city of Wuhan. That's the level 4 biosecure military Communist Party installation in the city that it's pretty much universally acknowledged the virus came from there. Now, whether it was they were studying it or weaponizing it is not known, but it's the Chernobyl of China. Beijing using 10,000 fake Twitter accounts to spread propaganda about pandemic. That's interesting, isn't it? U.S. lawmaker introduces bill to open potential lawsuits against Beijing over pandemic. Would you tell me, out of those 6 stories there, how many of them are interesting to you? So I got 6 out of 6 right here. 6 out of 6 going on. When this was in my mailbox, I was legit, low-key as the kids say, excited. And I read it, and you know what? It's the first time in a long time that I opened up a newspaper, you know, grandpa style, you know? And I just want you to see how beautifully, we forget how relaxing it is to read a nice newspaper in your hands. Editorial, where ties with communist China are close, the CCP virus follows. That's exactly what happened in parts of Italy. And then at the very back page, it said, lies kill, truth saves. The Chinese Communist Party endangered the world, the cover-up, da-da-da. See through the deception, keep yourself and your family truly informed. Read epoch.ca. That's the name of this newspaper, the Epoch Times. And you know what I did? I subscribed. When was the last time I had a paying subscription to a newspaper? Was it even in the 21st century? When I was a kid, I remember when I went to law school in the 90s, the mid-90s. I think I was there from 93 to 97. I was a kook. I had 4 newspaper subscriptions. Can you believe it? And I was so excited to read it, because that was really before, the internet was just born back then. So what was the news? I guess you could listen to the radio, watch TV, but I would hear the sound of the paperboy dropping them off at my door. And I guess I was a light sleeper, because the sound of the paper going thunk would wake me up, and I was so excited to get the news. I would wake up, because I was woken up, and I would go and read the paper. And I had 4 subscriptions: Globe and Mail, Edmonton Sun, I was living in Edmonton, Edmonton Journal, and the Financial Post, as it was called back then, because the National Post wasn't invented yet. I took 4 daily newspapers. Can you imagine all the paper that piled up? It was crazy. I don't think I've even had a newspaper subscription since I was in college. What's that, 20 years ago plus? 20 plus? So I've got a paper subscription now. Now, I just signed up about a week ago, and I don't know if I received my first copy yet. I think the paper version comes once a week. It's thin, but every word is readable. I don't need a 100-page newspaper that I'm not going to read 90%. Every word in this is of interest to me. Of course, the Epoch Times, you might recall that they're affiliated with various TV outlets too, including NTD TV. And you'll remember, for those of you who watch my 8 p.m. show, that they put out a masterful documentary on the source of the virus. And I interviewed the Epoch Times journalist who was behind it. Do you want to play a clip of that?
This is just the essential nature of Chinese communism. Chinese communism is evil.
Every person it harms is directly attributable to the Chinese Communist Party.
I began looking into the origin of the now widely known coronavirus in early February, with its timing amid the Hong Kong protests, the Taiwan elections, and the U.S.-China trade war. My name is Joshua Phillip. I'm an investigative reporter at the Epoch Times in New York, writing about the Chinese Communist Party's programs of espionage and unconventional warfare for well over a decade. Videos and messages from Chinese citizens leaking through the censorship suggested the situation was much worse than what the regime was reporting. As my research progressed, initial answers turned into more questions. I soon realized there was much more to the story than we were being told. Today, the coronavirus is impacting over 100 countries around the world. Billions of lives are at risk. And from what is said by the Chinese Communist Party, this allegedly started spontaneously in a seafood market in Wuhan, China.
Great documentary. We've embedded it elsewhere on our Rebel News page. I just checked that thing's being watched 3.8 million times on YouTube since it came out about a week or 2 ago. Very powerful. So high production quality, right? Just like the newspaper is high production quality. I had the pleasure of interviewing Joshua Phillip about it. Very, very good journalist, investigative journalist. And you probably saw a recognizable face there, our friend Gordon Chang, who I'm so glad you know what, Gordon Chang is such a celebrity commentator now because he's so smart. We've been friends with Gordon for years when he was more low profile, but now he's on all the legacy media in America. He's on like the biggest shows. He still makes time for us. I'm so grateful and slightly amazed every time he says, sure, I'll come on the show. So that's the Epoch Times. I say epoch. I hear some people even say epoch. They sort of pronounce it epic, as in it's totally epic, dude. However you pronounce it, it's amazing. They have a TV wing called NTD TV. And NTD stands for New Tang Dynasty. And that's an interesting wrinkle about the Epoch Times, is that it was, it's, as you can see, it's just completely news. Every story here I'm interested in as a non-Chinese, Canadian. What are my different boxes I would check if I was into like the woke scorecard? Well, male, white, 48, Canadian, Jewish, Toronto, whatever. But the Epoch Times itself came about from people who, what's the NTD? What's the New Tang part? What's the Epoch all about? Well, there is a persecuted group of people in China called the Falun Gong. It's a denomination or a sect. I don't fully understand it. I think it means like the law of the wheel or something. Frankly, you probably have seen Falun Gong people even in your city doing sort of Tai Chi moves, very peaceful, very harmonious, but it's sort of a layer of, I don't know if religion is the right word, but a belief system or a faith on top of that, very peaceful. Frankly, it strikes me as slightly new age, but they say it's a very ancient way of. I don't understand it, and I honestly haven't taken a lot of time to try to understand it. I remember having lunch with a couple of Epoch Times journalists a dozen years ago in Calgary, and they really tried to explain it to me. I was interested, just as if I'd be interested if a friend of any religion tried to explain the basics to me. I would listen and I would try and learn. I didn't really click. I don't think in a Chinese way, so some of the concepts didn't make sense to me. But I really admired these people, and of course one of them was not ethnically Chinese, but she was Falun Gong. I don't know if Joshua Phillip is Falun Gong. I don't care, because the journalism is outstanding. I'm going to get to why I mention that in a moment, because it helps explain. I'll get to a second reason in a minute, but the first, why am I telling you about Falun Gong, Chinese ethnicity, this spirituality that I don't quite understand, but from what I know I like. Why am I telling you about that? What's that got to do with a newspaper or a documentary? Well, these people have been persecuted in China. The Falun Gong gave people meaning and customs and traditions and exercise, frankly, the Tai Chi moves. And tens of millions of people in China became Falun Gong adherents. And that would often just take the form of, from what I can tell, is doing group exercises. Now, I know there's more to it than that. But one day, in Beijing, outside the main seat of government, I don't know, 10, 20, 30,000 Falun Gong adherents showed up to do their moves, and the Communist Party was caught by surprise. And they thought, how did we not know that tens of thousands of people would have a group gathering outside our headquarters? How did we not detect that? How did we not have infiltrators, spies, informants? Like, how on earth did something happen in China that we didn't know about? And if they can get together to talk about Falun Dafa, that's their theology, maybe they might get together to talk about democracy. Now, the irony is that until that point in time, the Communist Party approved of Falun Gong because it was healthy. It was regarded as a healthy outlet, exercise. In fact, there were a great many Communist Party leaders themselves because it was permitted. You would be looked down upon to become a Christian, for example. But Falun Gong was ethnically Chinese, historically Chinese, so it wasn't alien. or threatening, and people regarded it as like, a healthy thing to do. But then that turned overnight because of that mass demonstration. And then they started persecuting the Falun Gong mercilessly. Can you call up some viz on organ harvesting? Just type in organ harvesting. I'm about to tell you something that is so shocking and so gross that you'll be thinking, you'll be thinking it's reminiscent of Joseph Mengele and his diabolical experiments on Jews in concentration camps. So in China, I know this is so awful to say, I can't even believe I just don't even like talking about it, but we have to talk about it. They arrest dissidents, of course. They arrest Uyghur Muslims, but they really, really are obsessed with the Falun Gong. Okay, we're not getting any, can you give me a headline, just instead of a video, just give me a print headline. Organ harvesting Falun Gong. So they throw these Falun Gong in re-education camps. But they specifically target them. Organ harvesting is such an awful euphemism. They take a live person, they take a prisoner, political prisoner, and they cut the organs out of them through a surgical operation. China is harvesting organs from Falun Gong practitioners, expert panel finds. Now this is from Reuters, and this is dated just a year ago. Members of the spiritual movement Falun Gong act out a scene of stealing human organs to sell during a demonstration in Taipei in 2014 against China's persecution of the group. China outlawed Falun Gong as an evil cult in 1999 and has since detained tens of thousands of members. So that's a Hong Kong reenactment. Let me just read a couple lines from the story. China is murdering members of the Falun Gong spiritual group and harvesting their organs for transplant. A panel of lawyers and experts on Monday, as they invited further investigations into potential genocide. Members said they had heard clear evidence forced organ harvesting had taken place over at least 20 years. In a final judgment from the China Tribunal, an independent panel set up by a campaign group to examine the issue. I'll just read one more sentence. Beijing has repeatedly denied accusations by human rights researchers and scholars that it forcibly takes organs from prisoners of conscience and said it stopped using organs from executed prisoners in 2015. Oh, so we never did, and when we did, we stopped it. That reminds me of that scene with Steve Carell in the movie Despicable Me. I did not steal the moon, and by the way, I put it back. I did not harvest organs, people. That's a lie. And by the way, I have never done it, and we stopped in 2015. Just admitted it. It's so, I'm joking, but this is not a laughing matter. It's not just torture. It's the worst. It's trafficking. I mean, people are all upset. Oh, you're trafficking in ivory tusks. Stop the poaching of elephants for their tusks. Those beautiful elephants, we killed them for their tusks, and rhinos for their horn. In China, they take Falun Gong people and cut out the kidney, their heart, the liver, whatever, and sell it $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 for transplants for Communist Party officials. And I hate to say it, I'm sorry to say it, you're a rich North American and you're on a waiting list for an organ, and someone says, psst, come to China, we'll give you an organ for $100,000. Well, some people will pay, and maybe they know, and maybe they don't know, maybe they suspect, but maybe they don't care. Maybe they say, I'm going to die. I don't care where they got it from. They told me it was someone who died naturally. There's 1.4 billion Chinese people. Like, who knows? But China, the disgraceful communist tyranny. Joseph Mengele just did perverted experiments, like he did experiments on twins. He did experiments on pregnant women in the concentration camp, because to the Nazis, Jewish life was like animal life. It was not sacrosanct in any way, so you could do experiments on Jews for your curiosity, frankly, that you wouldn't even do on animals. So they did absolutely horrific experiments, Joseph Mengele, in the concentration camps. Well, that's what China's doing now, but they're doing it for profit. So I tell you all that because that's who the Falun Gong is. but they do outstanding journalism, and one of their focuses is obviously what's happening in their homeland. Now you can see that Joshua Phillip is a born and raised American. I've got no connection to China other than I'm interested in it, and this newspaper is an outstanding newspaper for Canadians of every background. I tell you the Chinese roots of the Epoch Times and the NTD TV because I'm coming to my main point in a minute. But before I do, I want to show you one more thing that I love about the Falun Gong. Can you get me some Shenyun, B-roll, S-H-E-N-Y-U-N? They have this, again, it's this cultural tradition, spiritual movement. So look at this. Look at this. It's like a Chinese ballet, operatic, great orchestra. They travel the world. I've seen it 4 times. Every year it's a new show. Some of it's in Chinese language, most of it. Actually, all of it, except for the hosts introduce it in English. There's also super titles, you know what I mean? Have you ever, it's like subtitles on a movie, but if it's a live show, they have just a screen with the words so you can understand it. It's, as you can see, it's fancy dancing. Throw up another B-roll of Shenyun, because it's just a feast for the eyes. And my kids love it because it's just so interesting. I call it fancy dance. It's very exciting dancing. Obviously, not everyone's into that, but it's storytelling. There's comedy. That looks like the visit to Korea. That looks like the Korean language, I think. It's in front of this huge digital screen that interacts with the, anyhow, what I like is, so they tell these stories and anecdotes and jokes and Aesop's fables. So there's probably like 25 little scenes in the night. So it goes by fairly quickly. And frankly, I sort of doze off a bit while the kids watch it. But I always wake up for the one sketch or segment. It's not a sketch. It's one dance. It's like a dance with a story. It's a ballet. Because, like I said, it's got 20, 25 little segments in this show. I'm almost done talking about this. And one of them tells a little story about modern day persecution. Often it's styled as some young girl who's reading a book about Falun Gong and another guy who's talking to her about it. And then this gang comes in and they're wearing black leather jackets like a gang. And they've got the red Chinese Communist Party hammer and sickle on their jacket backs. And it's like a battle. And I watched a lot of movies. I don't go to the theater that much, but you can't escape politics in Hollywood, right? It's always left-wing politics. It's always woke activist politics. I've been watching that show Billions, streaming show. I don't know if you throw up some Billions viz. It's a fun show. It's sort of fun. It's about this tough as nails billionaire stock market hedge fund guy in New York. Axelrod is his name, and this there he is. And there's the guy who's trying to take him. Paul Giamatti plays a public prosecutor trying to take him down. And I don't know the name of the guy that's the billionaire there. It's a good show. It's gritty. It's over the top. It's fun. It's candy. But there's this one character in like that, and they're swearing and they're tough and they're outrageous. But there's this one trans character or non-binary character, and all these tough as nails people who swear and sometimes murder and are ruthless and unethical. With this one non-binary character, they all call her they. And they this, and tell them, like they're all using the proper pronouns. And I'm just, guys, you are the worst, you're actors playing the worst people in the world, the most rapacious people in the world. And 99.9% of your show is just horrific, unethical, and then that's the non-binary role in the show. And all these ruthless killers use her proper pronouns, not only when they're her friend, but when they're her enemy. Like they're trying to destroy this non-binary person on the left. And even the ones saying, they never don't say, I'm gonna take her down. They say, I'm gonna take them down. What? I tell you that, it's a tangent. You can't get away from the wokeness in Hollywood. It's worse in music theater. I used to have a season's pass to the Mirvish shows in Toronto here. I loved it, but you get ready for some hard left-wing politics. What I love about Shen Yun, I'm sitting there for 3 hours watching the fancy dance, and the kids are on the edge of their seat. But I wake up when there's this one moment, because it's the only place in culture where the Communist Party of China and its brutalizing of the Falun Gong is shown not from the Communist Party's point of view. The NBA has so much money in China, they won't criticize China. Hollywood has so much money in China. The China box office is, in some cases, bigger than the American box office. So you see little changes made to the script. Appease China, just like it used to be. You know, I mean, you have anti-Christian narratives in Hollywood, you have anti-American narratives. The one place you get an anti-Communist Party of China narrative is at Shenyang. So that's an extremely long introduction to the Epoch Times, which is the only newspaper I subscribe to now. And obviously I'm not Falun Gong myself, I'm Jewish. But number one, it's excellent reporting. Absolutely excellent reporting, because they have so many sources in China. Number two, they're skeptics of the Chinese Communist Party, and for good reason. So they're the opposite of a state broadcaster. Can you show me the clip of Epoch Times has different offices around the world. Can you show me the clip of their printing press in Hong Kong being attacked by gangsters? Look at this. So they're attacked. They have an actual printing press that's attacked, Molotov cocktails apparently. A masked gang comes in and torches the place. I was in Washington, D.C. a couple months ago, and I was just on the street, and I was delighted to see the Epoch Times for sale in a street box. I'm going to just grab a photo of that, not that it's particularly interesting to see that, but I thought it was interesting, which is good because it's a legit newspaper that you don't have to be Falun Gong. I'm trying to find it. Here, I was just walking on the street. It's not that important. Just imagine a newspaper box for the Epoch Times on the street. It's surprising. So it's a big newspaper. It's around the world. It's credible because it doesn't accept the Communist Party of China's lies. Whereas that is the default position of the Western media. Can you grab Michael Bloomberg talking to that one gal saying Xi Jinping is a Democrat because he'd be thrown out if... You know what I'm talking about? When Michael Bloomberg... Thanks. So, I trust the Epoch Times. Yeah, there it is. That's in New York. You see it on the left there? You got a bunch of different newspaper boxes. Epoch Times. It's just there on the street. Pick it up, people. You will. And I'm not saying drop any skepticism. I'm not saying drop any skepticism. I'm skeptical of everything I read. But this is like water to a parched man in the desert, because you will not find these in the mainstream media. You'll find them on the Rebel. Most of these stories I've outlined here, we've talked about here. Many of them because I'm tipped off to the story by the Epoch Times. This sounds like a big ad for the Epoch Times, and I've been giving her for 29 minutes about the Epoch Times. We don't have to get the... Oh, you got... Here. Look. So where do you think you're going to get your facts about China? You know, one of the largest media companies in North America is called Bloomberg LP, named after Michael Bloomberg. They specialize in financial news, but they're in general news now. Here's Michael Bloomberg, 5 foot nothing, but full of love for communist China. You tell me, here's Michael Bloomberg. His whole wealth is tied up in China. That's his big bet. You tell me if you could ever expect anything critical about the Chinese Communist Party from a media company owned by this man.
The United States currently accounts for about 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions. China accounts for roughly 30% of greenhouse gas emissions. How do we, even if we get to net zero, how do you get China, India, and the other countries to be good partners?
China is doing a lot. Yes, they're still building a bunch of coal-fired power plants.
And they're still burning coal.
Yes, they are. But they are now moving plants away from the cities. The Communist Party wants to stay in power in China, and they listen to the public. When the public says, I can't breathe the air, Xi Jinping is not a dictator. He has to satisfy his constituents, or he's not going to survive.
He's not a dictator?
No, he has to. He has a constituency to answer to.
He doesn't have a vote. He doesn't have a democracy. He doesn't.
That
he's
doesn't
not held
mean he can
accountable by
survive
voters.
if his advisors
Is
gave
the
him.
check on him just a revolution?
You're not going to have a revolution.
then
No government survives without the will of the majority of its people. Okay? It's just, he has to deliver services. The Chinese Communist Party looks at Russia, and they look for where the Communist Party is, and they don't find it anymore. And they don't want that to happen.
I mean, the idea that the Chinese government is responsive to sort of a democratic expression of fresh air,
come on,
clean
of course
air.
they are.
I mean, I'm looking at the people in Hong Kong who
Come
are
on, go back and
protesting and wondering whether the
go
Chinese
back and
government
read
cares
the
what they have
press
to
the
say.
days when you have big pollution in Beijing, and they're doing something about it. That's ridiculous. The trouble is you can't overnight move cement plants and power plants just outside the city that are polluting the air, and you have to have their product. So some of it takes time. And there's always in government, even governments.
Can you believe what he was saying? The look on that reporter's face, I didn't catch her name, was it Margaret Wilson or something like that? I'm sorry. I should say her name, because give that woman kudos, not just for asking the question in the first place, but for pressing him and pressing him again. I think she came back at it 3 or 4 times there. Margaret Hoover, I think was her name I just saw there. Congratulations to her. Am I right? To speak truth to power. Michael Bloomberg, one of the richest men in America, what's his wealth, 55 billion? That's got to put him like number 3 in America. Like there's Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, and like he's in that top 10 for sure. That's Walmart rich, that's Amazon rich. Not just rich, but rich in the media business. He could flick his wrist and do what he wants. Not enough to win the Democratic Party nomination, despite spending $1 billion in a few months. But that man is in charge of Bloomberg LP. That man is in charge of so much of your news about China. And he's literally calling a tyrannical dictator a Democrat, praising him and pushing back against the reporters. The look on her face was classic. All right, well, it being 12:33 and me having cleared my throat for 33 minutes, let me therefore show you what I'm so exercised about, and I promise I will read the Super Chats. But look at this that was posted today on Canada's CBC state broadcaster. Headline: Racist and inflammatory. Canadians, so this isn't us people, it's Canadians who are upset by the Epoch Times. Canadians upset by Epoch Times claim China behind virus made it as a bioweapon. Special edition delivered to homes to attract new subscribers. So let me just linger on that headline for one more second. So who's upset? Why, Canadians are. Some people say, some readers say, the internet says, that's the laziest, sloppiest trick. That's what you write when it's your opinion, but you want to pass it off as news. We've detected are Canadians upset by the Epoch Times claim? Really? Have you even heard anyone mention it until now? I mean, maybe you got this lovely edition in your mailbox like I did. Every single house on my street got this. I don't see anyone in my neighborhood upset. I mean, we're doing some social distancing, and Canadians are upset. Our state broadcaster agrees with China's state broadcaster. These guys are the worst. Okay, let's go through it. Well, let's start by reading the caption of the photo. So I showed you this, right? A special 8-page edition of the Epoch Times was delivered to some households across Canada. Some Canadians who received it were put off by the newspaper's content. Hey guys, huge news! Excuse me, some Canadians were put off by the newspaper's content, which one recipient described as racist and inflammatory. Submitted by Carol Harmon. Well, maybe it was Carol Harmon. Sounds pretty white to me. So one Canadian. So we went from, look at that, look at the evolution, look at the headline. The headline says Canadians, scroll up for a bit. The headline at the top says Canadians are upset. And then look at the caption. It starts off with some Canadians. And then it ends up with one Canadian. The Epoch Times, a free newspaper typically found in street boxes, is coming under fire for advancing a conspiracy theory. Oh, the CBC has something to say about conspiracy theories. And the origin of the coronavirus and putting it straight into people's mailboxes unsolicited. Wow, is that okay? Hey, is it okay to send things to people unsolicited? I get CBC crap unsolicited 24/7, 365. Some Canadians who received it by mail and a postal carrier who says he is forced to deliver it are angry over a special 8-page edition of the paper exploring the idea that the virus that causes COVID-19 was created as a biological weapon and arguing it should be called the CCP virus, a reference to the Chinese Communist Party. Hey, I have an idea for you, mates. If you're working as a postal worker and you think that it is your place to look at what you're delivering and give us your unsolicited opinion on whether you like it or not, you're in the wrong business. It would be like, going to work for a McDonald's. If you're a vegan, don't go there, mate. If you're upset that you don't agree with something you're delivering in the mail, you might be ready to work for the Chinese Postal Service. Okay, keep reading. Go back to the website. So far we got one person who submitted the photo and one angry postal character who doesn't quite have the courage of his convictions, though. People in Oakville, Etobicoke, Markham, and Toronto, Ontario all reported getting copies of a special edition of the Epoch Times, as did residents in North Vancouver and Kelowna, BC, and Winnipeg. It's not clear that all those papers were delivered by Canada Post. Lisa Armstrong in Kelowna found a copy in her rural mailbox. Oh my God, Lisa Armstrong, you got a copy in your rural mailbox? You okay? That's when I got annoyed or suspicious. It's like, why is this in my mailbox? You expect to see those kind of things online on social media, she said. Thanks, Lisa. It did seem to allude to conspiracy theories, totally like, maybe it was manufactured, this virus was manufactured in the lab. Well, no, we know scientifically that's just not true. Well, I didn't know that Lisa Armstrong is a scientist, but I do know she has a rural mailbox. I've read this. This does not make that claim. This does not make the claim. Let's go right there. Let's show that the story is called China's Bioweapons Ambition. And it quotes the Chinese Communist, the People Liberation Army, Chinese Defense Minister, General Chi Haotian, explained a long-range plan, bioweapon ambitions. It talks about China's explicit bioweapons ambitions. I read this, and I think she's lying when she says that this newspaper claims that that it was a weapon. They talk about the fact, bioweapons ambitions. Give me a second here. I'm going to go through this a little more carefully, not when I'm on TV. They talk about the arsenal. When Comrade Xiaoping was still with us, the party's Central Committee had the perspicacity to make the right decision not to develop aircraft carrier groups and focus instead on developing lethal weapons that can eliminate mass populations of the enemy country. So this is from Chinese Defense Minister General Chi Haotian. So how's that a conspiracy theory if it's quoting the former Chinese defense minister? Talking about how China shouldn't spend money on aircraft carrier groups, but should spend money on biological weapons. That's, let me read some more. General Chi Hao-chian, they have a picture of the guy, they quote him, "Only by using non-destructive weapons that can kill many people will be able to reserve America for ourselves." I don't quite know what reserve America for ourselves means. Our economic development is all about preparing for the needs of war. There's nothing here that says it was a biological weapon, but it's very useful context to know that China believes in bioweapons. In other words, Lisa Armstrong and her rural mailbox, I think they're lying about what this is. I'm going to go back and read every word slowly. But the CBC is citing, I think, someone lying about them. Put it back up. Let's keep reading some more. Jason Kindrachuk, a Canada Research Chair in Emerging Viruses at the University of Manitoba, says that through studying the genome of the SARS coronavirus 2, scientists can see it is similar to other bat coronaviruses and that it likely evolved naturally. Oh. There is an unbelievably high consensus within the scientific community at this point that, that there is a very close to zero, if not zero, chance that the virus was ever engineered, Kindrachuk said. Armstrong was also worried the issue's anti-communist messaging could inflame racial tensions in Canada during the pandemic. Okay, slow down for a second here. So first of all, I don't think anyone was explicitly saying that the virus was engineered. But that doesn't mean it couldn't be purposed as a bioweapon. Can you put this webpage on hold and Google Winnipeg virus RCMP? Because I want to remind Professor, what was his name, Andrechuk there, who has never studied the bat virus himself, of course. Chinese researcher escorted from infectious disease lab amid RCMP investigation. Public Health Agency of Canada describes it as a possible policy breach, no risk to the Canadian public. Yeah, that was just not even a year ago. So this Chinese national, Dr. Xiangwo Chu, was escorted out of the, and this is in Winnipeg, by the way, by the RCMP for spying on our virus research and going back to Wuhan and back and forth. Okay, put the CBC story back up. Armstrong was also worried that, so anti-communist messaging could inflame racial tensions? Why, are you saying that all communists, that all Chinese are communists? Or all communists are Chinese or something? So if you're anti-communist, that's anti-Chinese? I just showed you at great length. Hey, can you pull up a picture of Cindy Gu? You can get it from my Twitter feed. I happen to know the publisher of the Epoch Times, Cindy Gu. I've interviewed her before. As the name, yeah, there she is. As the name suggests, she's ethnically Chinese, you can see. In fact, she still speaks with an accent. She was born overseas. So that's Cindy Gu. She's the boss of the Epoch Times newspaper. I've had the pleasure of meeting her, talking to her on the phone, emailing her. Okay, thanks. So that's Cindy Gu. But some white woke liberal in Winnipeg, put the CBC one back up, please, says that she's worried that Cindy Gu is whipping up anti-Chinese racism. It really feels racist and inflammatory, Armstrong, the white liberal, said. And right now, we're all scared. We're all vulnerable. We don't know what's going to happen next. Then somebody that starts playing on those fears, it's a very dangerous thing to do at this time. Yeah, hey guys, it's dangerous to call out the Chinese Communist Party and to mention the fact that, so you got a bunch of white liberals misinterpreting or making up what's in this, saying Cindy Gu and her entire Chinese-based news source are racist. And this is news that's fit to print in the CBC. Let's read some more, and then I'm going to go to the Super Chats. Let's read just a little bit more. Cindy Gu, the publisher of the Epoch Times, declined to say how many copies of that issue were distributed. In an email to CBC News, Gu said the publication has been delivering copies to specific neighborhoods. The Epoch Times has recently been sampling copies, blah, blah, blah. This is a standard way of raising brand awareness and recruiting new subscribers. That's true. The CBC wouldn't know about that because they just take your money. Gu disagrees that the paper will fuel racism against people of Chinese background. So Gu has to convince these white Karens and the white CBC reporters that she's not an anti-Chinese racist. Some people may have erroneously conflated criticism of the Chinese Communist Party with criticism of the Chinese people, she wrote. Understanding the difference is vital and will eliminate racial tension as people come to understand that the criticism of the handling of the virus is of the CCP, not the Chinese people. She is so right. If you actually want to lower the temperature on this, make it clear to people, don't be mad at Chinese people, be mad at the Chinese dictatorship. Don't even be mad at China. Be mad at the Chinese dictatorship. Cindy Gu is the one reducing racial tensions. And then here again, who's behind the Epoch Times? This is a scary, hey, you know who's behind them, guys? The Epoch Times, headquartered in New York, is part of a group of organizations under the Epoch Media Group umbrella, which also includes the Shenyun Dance Troupe, I showed you that, and the new Tang Dynasty TV channel. I've been there, great people. It says it operates in 23 languages in 35 countries. A sociology professor, oh my God, we got a sociology professor, brace yourself, says the Epoch Media Group is affiliated with the Falun Gong movement, a religious group that began in China and was declared illegal and a cult by the Chinese government in 1999. Well, if you read that and you don't immediately like them, something's wrong with you. Its followers say the Chinese government persecutes them and oppresses their religious rights. Oh, just their followers say that? No one else says that. You state broadcaster, Trudeau-loving, communist China-abiding hacks. Hey, they say they're persecuted, and we're not going to say it as a fact because you know the Chinese government denies it. Falun Gong followers started to organize large-scale protests against the Chinese government's attempt to suppress the practice, so it just evolved into this very antagonistic relationship between the Chinese government and this religious group, said Xiaoping Li, a professor at Okanagan College who studies media outlets that serve the Chinese-Canadian diaspora. There are many stories about how group members were persecuted in China. There could be certain exaggerations, but definitely there's persecution and there are violations of human rights. Oh, well, you know, grudgingly acknowledge it. On the one hand, there's antagonism between the two groups. Yeah, there's this People's Liberation Army soldier with a gun and someone about to have his liver cut out. They're antagonists against each other. Yeah, they're not morally equal, you fool. As for the Epoch Times, Lee says it's not clear where the group gets its funding, but it can afford to employ reporters who speak English and Chinese in the many countries where it operates. Does that cost more to hire someone who speaks Chinese and English? Like, do you have to pay double? Or do you just find people who speak Chinese and English? Cindy Gu speaks Chinese and English. Oh my God, you can afford Cindy Gu? I've met Cindy Gu. I'm guessing she works, she's got to pay the bills, but I'm guessing she works as a labor of love. Oh my God, they can actually afford to hire people who speak English and Chinese? How much money do you have? There must be no one like that. Oh my God, the CBC is stupid. Put it back up. Let's read some more. Let's read some more and then we'll get the super chats. Typically what happens is it's funded principally by donations. In a Chinese dissident community, in a given local context, as Stephen Noakes, a senior lecturer at the University of Auckland who studies Chinese culture. The people who staff the newspaper are normally also drawn from that context or are third-party acquaintances of the local Falun Gong community. So basically they're going through, kernel of truth, way buried down. So the headline is that they're racist. And then you're way down here. There's a kernel of truth. Hey guys, there's a teeny, the most effective disinformation is that which has a kernel of truth to it. It kind of flies under the radar, says Claire Wardle of First Drafts, which educates journalists. Oh good, I'm going to be educated. And by the way, they're not accusing the Chinese Communist Party of disinformation. They're accusing the Epoch Times. And then just scroll down to Carrier. It was an article, Carrier objects to delivering the paper. It was an article about the possible bioweapons linked to coronavirus that set off alarm bells for a Toronto mail carrier where he saw the special edition appear in his mail station on Friday. Oh, so he took it and read it, eh? Any other mail he's reading? CBC News is not naming the carrier because he's concerned he could lose his job with Canada Post. Whoa, you got a brave whistleblower here. They're saying the coronavirus is part of biowarfare agenda by the Chinese people. That's over the line for me. Oh, hey, you know what? I'm so sorry that you didn't like something in someone else's mail. And again, I'm going to go through this story more carefully, but I think he's a goddamn liar. You know, they're talking about there's understandable concern about the activities of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, China's only P4 lab, one meant for working with easily transmitted pathogens. As the official narratives offered for the source of the virus have been disproven, questions have been raised about whether the CCP virus leaked from the institute. In any case, as questions about the origin of the virus have gone unanswered, the CCP has begun throwing out wild charges that the United States is responsible for the virus. So they're not saying that the virus lab did it. They're saying there are questions about it because, like Chernobyl, the government covers it up, and they point out that the Chinese are lying about it. I think the CBC, because they don't want to make the lies in their own voice, they're saying Canadians are outraged at the racism. Okay, what's the racism part again? Well, you criticize the Chinese Communist Party. Was that the racist part? Oh, and you said this was a bioweapon. No, let me read that again. There is understandable concern about the activities of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. As the official narratives offered for the source of the virus have been disproven, questions have been raised about whether the CCP virus leaked from the institute. In any case, questions about the origin of the virus have gone unanswered. The questions have gone unanswered. So that's not a conspiracy theory, that's called journalism. The CBC are liars, and imagine the gall of telling a Chinese Canadian, Cindy Gu, that she is a racist. The CBC is execrable. I can't even say the word, I'm so mad. All right, let's read our super chats. I'm so far behind on the super chats. And there I had a whole list. I had a whole list of videos, and I don't think I showed you one. Let's go through the super chats because you guys are super. You're always super to me. It's, you know, I mean, okay, send super chat 1, and I'll read super chat 2. Paul Schofield, $20. Hi, Az, your show on the plague in Marseille last night was superb. Many lessons to learn if we don't think ourselves too sophisticated to do so. P.S. I subscribe to the Epoch Times too. Oh, thanks very much. You know what? I got so much good feedback on my show last night. I talked about how the plague came to the French city of Marseille in 1720 and how it sneaked through the quarantine. Maybe we should put that whole monologue up on YouTube because I got so much good feedback on it. I did so much work on it, researching it. Jimmy Lawrence, $2. Newspapers, a far gone era of a classier time. I think you're right. Observer Dude, £5. Apparently an elderly man in the UK received abuse from his neighbors for not clapping for the National Health Service. I saw that. That's a Communist Party move too, taking notes of who's the first to stop clapping for the dictator. Viking Insane, $5. Why don't diversity quotas in government include the middle class people? If Justin Trudeau wants his cabinet to represent Canada, we need more middle classes and poor. That's a great point. You know, I knew the stats for the UK. Even, the stats that before the last election, only 4% of UK MPs came from the working class, including the Labour Party. They were all rich toffs. Same thing in Canada. I mean, can you call up Jagmeet Singh, Toronto Life? Or maybe it was a different, the guy has luxury cars, bespoke suits, Gucci this, Rolex that, like he is. I don't know if he's a millionaire or using borrowed money or someone else's gift. He is ostentatiously rich. There was this photo spread about him. Yeah, so scroll down. Like, he's got like fashion shows, but there's pictures of him, I think, with like, maybe it was a different photo spread. Yeah, like that, and his fancy cars, his BMWs, everything luxury. It was somewhere else. So that's your working man's party. A guy who has $2,000 handmade suits, drives an $80,000 vehicle. He's for the working man. Yeah, I'd like to see some diversity. John Huang, $10. Well, thank you very much. have a lot of support from Chinese people for our point of view, including mainland Chinese who love democracy, Taiwanese, and of course Falun Gong. Throw some Tibetans and Uyghurs in there too, and we got ourselves a coalition. Proud Boys Calgary, 279, daily reminders, CCP delenda est. That's that old saying, the Communist Party of China must be destroyed. AA, $5. Ezra, why don't you sue for access to the Trudeau news conferences and general news conferences in Ottawa? Well, it's like you're a little mind reader there or something. John Andrews, $20. Thank you very much, John. Gene McLeod, $5. Did you see the video of Sleepy Joe falling asleep? The little briefing also had Hillary broadcasting with Joe supporting him. I thought it was funny. Do you have that handy? Take a look.
Are women. And 1 out of 3 jobs held by women in our country has been classified as essential. So this is an issue that affects all of us, young and old, every kind.
I think the man fell asleep. You know, I can fall asleep. I have sound canceling headphones, and I have, through years of practice, been able to fall asleep pretty much on a dime. You got to catch sleep when you can get it, little naps. But I try and stay awake during my live streams. Oh, let's catch up here. Hard Money, $10. Hello all, thank you Rebel News. Well, thanks very much. Brent Chapman, $10. Has anyone seen the Chinese Army in UN uniforms at the World Military Games? No, but that is very interesting. Wouldn't surprise me, because countries that send peacekeepers through the UN, they wear UN uniforms. That's a terrifying thought, that the Chinese People Liberation Army would be staffing UN functions around the world, and why not? Why not? Jimmy Lawrence, $5. Hey Ezra, China Uncensored. They have been around for a really long time and are extremely reputable. Someone else told me that same thing yesterday, so I'll have to check them out. VM Parliament, $5. How do you pick viewer feedback emails? I never seem to get a reply. Are you kidding? Victoria, I know, first of all, I know your name because I see it so often, Victoria, and I think I read your emails on my shows fairly often. I think I probably read emails from you at least 5 times. I certainly see them, so thank you. I mean, I know your name. I see it on Twitter too. Derek G, $20. Have you watched Out of the Shadows and Hoaxed? If so, any thoughts? Will you guys produce documentaries? Final question. Why isn't there more indie medias in Canada? I've seen parts of both of those movies. I just haven't taken the time to watch them all. We produced a few documentaries. You want to call up GretaInc.com? Go to GRETAINC.com. Kian Bexley went to Stockholm, and he did a mini documentary about Greta Thunberg. Can we play just a moment of that just to show people? Yeah, Greta Inc. Just click on it. Give people just a few moments.
Elites from around the world. The campaign to canonize Greta as a saint in the eyes of the world's leftist Zoomers and Boomers alike was coordinated, it was orchestrated and executed nearly flawlessly. Nobody has bothered to dig deep into the rise of her messiahhood until now. I've just landed in Stockholm, Sweden to do just that.
I recommend it, GretaInc.com. Viking Insane, $5. Nobel Prize winner Luc Montagnier, who discovered that HIV causes AIDS, claims that COVID is sequences from the HIV virus, points to lab engineering. I saw that theory. I haven't followed up on it, but I've seen reports of that. Dan M, $28. Well, thank you very much. And the first super chat that I missed way back when, sorry for getting to it an hour late. Mike Jones, $5. Ezra, do you like Michelle Rempel? Seems she's turning to the left also. Why do conservatives flop over to left-wing media all the time? Michelle Rempel is a mixed bag. She's a feminist and an identity politics person, which irritates me. We contacted her a couple weeks ago and asked if she was going to give up her MP pay raise, and she said, yeah, I'm out of town now, I'll do it later. That's a dumb way of saying, no, I've taken my raise, maybe I'll change it later. And I see the latest news that she's not in Canada, she's down in Oklahoma or something with her husband. That doesn't make me particularly mad, but I do think that a Canadian MP should be in Canada during this time. But that's the least of my problems. I think that the party in general, I like that she's pro-oil sands. But she seems a little woke for me, to be honest. Why do conservatives flop over to left-wing media all the time? Because of the carrot and the stick. You come on Rebel News, oh, you're going to be smashed and smashed and smashed by the CBC statement. Look at how they're going after the Epoch Times. The whole theme of today's show was a baseless, racially bizarre attack on a Chinese newspaper. It's not even a Chinese newspaper, it's in English. It's a great news. I read every word in this, and I'm not Chinese. It's a great newspaper. This is the only newspaper I subscribe to. And if you haven't subscribed yet, they have try 1 month for adults. Go to readepoch.ca. Do you see that? Read Epoch. I went there and I signed up right there. Bam. It's the only newspaper I subscribe to. It's so gorgeous. My point is, the CBC, you saw the answer. You step out of line, and the CBC will put together such a fake, factually false, bizarre, accusatory, inflammatory attack on. If you can call Cindy Gu racist, anti-Chinese, well, then you're ready for saying 1 + 1 is 3. Show me the mildly Chinese store. You know, I lived in Edmonton for 4 years. I like that city. And there's a store in Edmonton called the Mildly Chinese Herbal Center Limited. You can find it on Google. Now, do you think that's only mildly Chinese, or do you think that's extremely Chinese? Yeah, that's extremely Chinese. And that's a joke I got from my friend Colby Kosh, who walked by it and made that joke once. The Epoch Times is mildly Chinese. And by Chinese, I mean people of Chinese descent, Chinese ethnicity, race, if that's the word you want to use. But actually, it's Chinese in that they love China and Chinese people, and they want to free it from the Chinese Communist Party. Cindy Gu is mildly Chinese. I'm using that joke from that store just because I think it's a funny name of a store. Cindy Gu is Chinese Canadian. A lot of the Falun Gong people are Chinese Canadian, Chinese American. You saw Chinese in Hong Kong, there's Chinese in Taiwan. And for good reason, because they want to free China. Just like Tibetans want to free Tibet. And the Uyghurs, everyone wants to get rid of the Chinese tyrant. And what the CBC did was so gross. They took the side of the Chinese Communist Party, even taking the Chinese Communist Party rhetoric that to criticize China is racist, when the publisher of this herself is a Chinese Canadian woman. And the lies that they retail from a bunch of woke white liberals, including the one cowardly postal carrier who won't even have the courage to, I mean, he's a snoop, he's a voyeur. Oh, I was reading your mail and I don't like what someone is sending you, so I'm going to complain. And do you do this all the time? You creepy weirdo, you voyeur, you peeping Tom. Have you read any of my other mail? Do I need to get your approval before I read a letter? Do I need to get your approval before I send a letter? Because no one asked me if I have to subsidize you, you creepy, voyeuristic, peeping Tom. Maybe he's a racist too. Or maybe he's a Chinese Communist Party sympathizer. We don't know, because the CBC has withheld that interesting information. Is he a supporter of the Chinese Communist Party? We don't know, because we can't check his name, because the CBC... Throw that up one more time. I want to show you the lie in the headline. And then we're done, because it's 1 o'clock. Canadians, racist and inflammatory, Canadians upset. No. 2 Canadians are upset. And then 2 other professors try and back. 2 Canadians are upset. That's the proper headline for those goddamn liars at the CBC. You know what? I swear to God, this very second, I'm not even kidding, this very second I just got an email from Cindy Gu. I'm not even kidding. Now, it's a private email to me. She said, thank you for subscribing to the newspaper. I'm not going to read, because I wrote her a private note. And it's very encouraging. And I really like Cindy. And I tell you one thing, I'm going to do my best to help Cindy in whatever way I can. Not just because I'm friendly to, I mean, I don't want to overstate the intimacy of our friendship. I haven't seen her in years, actually. But I've interviewed her before, and I've met her before, and I've talked to her before. But we're friendly acquaintances, let me call it that way. I'm delighted to get an email. Right now, I can't even believe it, 1:04 it came in. I'll just read one line. I mean, this is not for publication, but there's one line. It is heartening, though, that the majority of the comments on the CBC article are critical of it. It is heartening. Okay, I'll leave the rest for a later announcement, but I reached out to Cindy this morning when I saw that. Well, there, I'm in good spirits now. You know, you can't be a journalist if you work for the government. That's an adjective that destroys the first, I forget my grammar words. A government journalist is 180 degrees different than a journalist, right? It's like saying a government comedian or a government punk rock band. Yeah, mate, if you're getting your paycheck from Justin Trudeau, pretty sure you're not a real punk band. Pretty sure you're not a real comedian because you're not allowed to mock power. We've talked about it many times before how historically the court jester of the kings wasn't to entertain the king. Yeah, that happened. But he had special immunity to mock the king. That was his duty. He was given an immunity because he could say, oh, I'm just joking, mate. So the jester was extremely important because he could say what everyone else was thinking but afraid to say, because if you're some prince or courtier or up-and-comer or schemer or lobbyist or businessman, or so you don't want to say something that's going to offend the king. You don't want to say he's wrong. You don't want to be the guy to say he's got no clothes on. But the jester, the fool, the fool as it was called historically, his special role was to mock the king. Everyone else would say, oh, and the king, now some of the mockery was done in private, obviously. And the court fool had a special role to tell truths to the king that no one else could or would. In fact, the court fool was an extremely important office. People tried to get to the court fool, say, you've got to tell the king this, you've got to tell him that. He was extremely important precisely because he had immunity. I mean, you criticize the king, you watch out. I want to tell you, there was one very, very famous court jester, Will Summers. That's jester. Can you go to, I know we're over time, but can you go to Will Summers? Just go to the Wikipedia page, grab a picture of him. He worked for the king, Yeah, look at that picture. Click on the picture there. I'm just going to quote, now this is Wikipedia, you never trust Wikipedia, but the jester was a man of integrity and discretion. Yeah, go back to the image, I'll just read along. Just give me one more minute. Let me read this. And this is Wikipedia, and I know Wikipedia is it's a source of intelligence, not evidence. It's like rumors. So you read the rumor and then you check it out for yourself. There's often a citation. So look under career there. Will Summers remained in service to the king for the rest of Henry's life. In the king's later years, when he was troubled by a painful lead condition, it was said that only Summers could lift his spirits. The jester was also a man of integrity and discretion. Thomas Cromwell appreciated that Summers sometimes drew the king's attention to extravagance and waste within the royal household by means of a joke. Court jesters were permitted familiarities without regard for deference, and Summers possessed a shrewd wit which he exercised even on Cardinal Wolsey. He did occasionally overstep the boundaries In 1535, the king threatened to kill Somers with his own hand after Sir Nicholas Carew dared him to call Queen Anne a ribald and the Princess Elizabeth a bastard. Okay, I'll stop reading that now. Yeah, there's no need to call into question the sexual integrity of someone's mum. But isn't that interesting? That our British tradition, our Commonwealth tradition, is that if we have a government-paid commentator, it's specifically to prick the king, not to polish his shoes. What a difference Will Somers, a jester, a man of integrity, who people would say, please tell the king about this because everyone's too cowardly to do so. Even in the royal household. Imagine trying to take on something in the royal household. Why? You want to be banished or exiled? Or the jester could. The court fool. What a difference today the CBC is. They're holding the opposition to account. They're holding the Epoch Times to account. They had 3 CBC reporters on that bizarre failed hit attempt on Epoch Times. They have not put 3 reporters on the BS behind Theresa Tam or Patty Hyde or any of the other disastrous decisions that Trudeau has made. The CBC, instead of mocking the powerful, mocks those trying to hold the powerful to account. It would be as if Will Somers, instead of mocking the king, joking at the king, calling out the king's excesses, went around and picked on beggars and the lowly. That's what a state broadcaster does. That's the grave disgrace of the CBC. And that, more than anything else, is why I support the Epoch Times. You know, I pay a huge subscription to blacklocks.ca. I think I pay $300 a year because someone has to support them. I even subscribe to our competitors, Post Millennial and True North. I'm a paying subscriber and donor to both, even though in some ways they're competitors to us, because they're independent, they don't take government money, and you got to support them. And the Epoch Times, I'm now a paying subscriber to the Epoch Times. I don't agree with every word they say. Actually, I do agree with every single word in this 8-pager. Couldn't find one word to disagree with. Because they are that antagonist to power. They're not apologists and appeasers to power. You cannot call yourself a journalist if you are a government journalist. That's like putting an adjective on the word water. You're either water or you're not. No, I'm dry water. No. Dry water ain't a thing. I'm a journalist. Okay, good. I'm a government journalist. Nah, mate, we have a word for that. It's called a press secretary. Anyways, I got to go. I got to do other work. I'm going to go on this on my 8 p.m. show tonight. I'm so mad. I'm so excited. I just got an email from Cindy. I've been talking about Cindy for an hour, and I got an email from her right now. One more super chat. PAH, $20. Thank you. Captain Picard, $5. Thank you. Akasha of the Nile, $5. People employed by post are not allowed to read mail beyond the address by policy, federal law. Thank you for that. I suppose if it's a piece of paper like this, but it sounds like he opened up someone else's mail and went like this. Sounds like it. Christina Pavlovska, 20, you are amazing. Well, thank you, that's nice of you to say. Kurt Mugi, hope I'm saying that right. $7. Thoughts on comments on potential tracing brought up by Trudeau's daily address to his people. Wouldn't be surprised if Canada becomes one-party rule. Well, he certainly would like that, wouldn't he? Akasha of the Nile, $2. Thank you. Alberta Skies, $5. The Epoch Times documentary, The Origin of the CCP Virus, I highly recommended. Well, not only did we embed that on our website and tweet it, but I interviewed the host of that, the anchor of that movie, Joshua Phillip, afterwards, and I enjoyed my conversation with him. You can find that on our website. Dennis Paymont, $3. Yes, $3 from Quebec. Well, merci, mon ami, and thank you for that. Okay, well, I've gone 15 minutes late, but I don't mind. Because I was working my way through these issues. I'm going to go, and you know what, look at this. I got this list I got this list of all these videos I was going to do. I said to Justin, I said, we're just going to do the videos, no more long rambles and rants. But my God, I couldn't stop thinking about this. And I was thinking about it all morning. I sent the note to Cindy. And what a serendipity that she emailed me, like right then. It's too funny. Derek G, $5. Do you believe media should be readers, viewers funded by law? Or at least more than a certain percentage of the revenue should be? What are you regulating? We don't have rules about restaurants should be funded a certain percent this way. It's just a restaurant. The idea that there would be a government restaurant, well, it's unthinkable. Let there be 1,000 different kinds of restaurants, and people go to the ones they want and don't go to the ones they don't want. And it's not the government's business to run a restaurant. They would run it very poorly. And you know that within a short period of time, they would have special discounts for friends, and they would source their food from friends of power, and they would hire that politician's niece and nephew. Like, imagine a government-run restaurant. First of all, the food would be terrible. Second of all, it would be expensive. Third of all, they'd make you wait as long as the DMV. And fourth of all, they would find every way to wring dollars out. It would be like the mafia getting involved in a company. Soon they would just own it. Yeah. Same thing with the media. Absolutely the same thing. All right, my friends, thanks for your time today. I appreciate the support as always. If you're interested, come back at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm gonna really outline my thoughts on this Epoch Times. Concise research. I was workshopping it out here. I gotta see if I can get Cindy Gu on the show tonight. All right, I gotta go. Until next time, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, to you around the world, you keep fighting for freedom.